Welcome everyone. My name is Enrico Dolvin, and I was invited by Synergy to talk today to you about why so many large technology projects fail. And I will start today with a number. 50%. Study after study has shown that technology projects frequently fail to deliver on their promises. By some estimates, in fact, well over half the time. These reports show that 25% of technology projects fail outright. That means they never delivered anything. No product, no service, just zero result. A waste of time and money. Another 20 to 25% don't show any return on investment. This means the costs were higher than the value it actually produced. And a large part of the other 50% still needed massive reworking by the time they were finished. They suffered from something that I call value creep. Over time, during the project, the cost will go up and up. At the same point of time, the projected benefits will get less and less. This has a double impact on your value, as it is endangered from both sides. Some examples of prominent technology project failures. Lidl, the discounter supermarket chain. They lost 500 million euros on their last SAP project. They never went live and continued to work with their existing system. We'll get back to this project later on in this talk. Revlon, the makeup company, they got sued by some of its own shareholders because of a failed ERP implementation. They did went live, but as a result, their whole supply chain broke down, and Revlon lost millions and millions in revenue, and that is why they got sued. One of my own clients, one of the largest private banks in Switzerland, tried to replace their core banking system. It was built on the IBM host platform and programmed with COBOL. A few weeks before the planned go live, they had to pull the plug. Not only did they lose a 3-digit million investment, they also had to pay higher operational costs afterwards. They already signed the contracts for the licenses of the new system, and they had to pay them. They also already fired large parts of the existing COBOL development team. Hey, they didn't need them anymore, right? Now they were forced to rehire them, and this of course at a premium. So why is this happening? There is so much theory available on project management. There are so many certified project managers from PMI and other organizations. We have the whole Agile movement, and there is an army of Scrum Masters and product owners available. So many lessons have been learned by teams that did similar projects. And still, so many of these large technology projects fail. Why this is the case is what we will explore today. I will walk you through my personal top 10 reasons why so many of these large technology projects go wrong. Why listen to me? Why am I somebody that has some useful insights about failed projects? Well, I pretty much work exclusively with projects that are about to fail or already failed. I work as a so-called project recovery consultant for more than 12 years. This means that my clients call me when they realize they have a troubled project at hand and need help to turn the ship around. This is not always the best option, and in those cases I will help my client to limit the damage as much as possible and close the project down. I also have written more than 20 case studies on project failures. Most of them I have published on my website. These case studies are based on documents from lawsuits and internal audit reports of governmental organizations. Both are a treasure of information. And the reason I'm writing these case studies is that it is better to learn from the mistakes of others than to make them myself. So, before we dive into my personal top 10 reasons why projects fail, we first need to understand what project failure actually means. We could make it easy for ourselves and define project failure as the opposite of project success. But then the next question would be, what is project success? And simply put, project success occurs when the outcome of the project adds significant value to the organization that is doing the project. And value is defined as all the benefits that are delivered by implementing the project, minus all the cost associated to the project. And this simple equation represents actually 3 different levels of project success. Level number 1, project delivery success. This assesses the classic triangle of scope, time, and budget. It also assesses the quality of the delivery. But project delivery success represents more. It represents all your costs associated with the project. This means not just your cash out to deliver the project, but also, for example, your opportunity cost. Because if you do this project, there is something else you cannot do. If this project fails, you not just fail to deliver the project, but you also fail to deliver what you could have done instead. Project delivery success also represents the cost of delay. If I don't finish the project in time, what would this cost me? For most projects, these are just the additional cost of the project team being longer deployed, and some benefits coming later. But, for example, in the case of a regulatory project for a bank, it could mean a significant fine. Or it could even mean that they shut down parts of your business. Project delivery success also represents your total cost of ownership. After all, within the project, it is determined what the operational cost will be in the near future. Typically, shortcuts during the delivery phase result in workarounds and additional costs after go live. The second level of project success is what I call product or service success. Pretty much all technology projects deliver a product, a service, or both. And here we assess if the delivered product or service is successful or not. For example, a CRM system that is happily used by all users in scope has an uptime of 99.9%, an increased customer satisfaction by 25%, and a decrease in operational costs of 15% compared to its predecessor sounds like a big success. These are your benefits. These are positive results as a consequence of you delivering the project. And you cannot measure these the moment your project is finished. You can only measure these after the product or service is in use for a while. This is important to understand. It is impossible to determine for a technology project if it has been successful or not shortly after the project is done. Unless, of course, it has not been delivered at all. The third level of project success is what I call business success. It answers the question if the product or service brings value to the overall organization and how it contributes financially and strategically to the business's success. This is your value. And this is not the same as level 2. it is not the same as product or service success. A small example: if I would deliver a very successful new service, but it cannibalizes one of my existing services, the financial contribution of the project to the business could actually be negative. As you already have figured out by now, project success and project failure are not absolutes. It may not be possible to be a little bit pregnant, but you can be a little bit successful. Every project has multiple success criteria related to business results, product or service results, and project delivery results. Some of these criteria may be absolute, meaning they must be completed 100% on or before the original planned date. And some of them are relative, meaning they must be completed to a certain extent by a date that is acceptable by the client. So, project success is determined by how many of your success criteria are satisfied and how well they are satisfied. Project success also depends on who you ask. Let's take, for example, the latest S/4HANA implementation project I was involved in. When I would ask the project manager of the project, she would answer me that it was a very successful project. She delivered on time and almost in budget, and all the changes in scope were agreed upon with the steering committee and the sponsor. When I would then ask some end users, they will tell me that they absolutely hated the system. It was far too complex compared to the previous one. It was incredibly slow due to some performance issues, and some business critical functionality was not implemented because of these scope changes. When I would ask the COO, who was actually the sponsor of the project, he would say, well, yes, the project by itself was kind of successful. We delivered it on time and within the budget, but afterwards my operational costs were 2 times as much as we expected. Because we had to do so many workarounds, we had so many additional need for people to actually make it work in operations. So different stakeholders may have very different opinions on how successful a project was. Project success also depends on when you ask, right? Let's take the same project from the previous example and imagine it would be 12 months later. By then, the users will probably have a better grasp of the system. They understand better what to do with it. They might have had some additional training. Some additional features will be implemented that were missing. Some processes are adjusted to the system so that it can actually work. And the initial performance problems might have been solved by the supplier. So the initial very strong negative reaction is turning into a more, I would not say positive, but it's a different reaction as the first few months. As a result of these changes, slowly but steady, the operational cost will go down as well. It's still not close to the original projections, but it's also not as bad as before. And since 12 months have passed, the budget that represents the cost actually has been adjusted as well to reflect the higher cost, which means the COO gets less bothered by his peers about why does it cost so much, because suddenly it's within the budget instead of way out of the budget. So in order to determine the success or failure of your project, you should really define all the success criteria relevant to your project, then define how you will measure them, and define when you will measure them. So now we have a good understanding about what project failure and project success really means. And we can come to my personal top 10 reasons for project failure. This list is based on what I have seen and learned after more than 20 years working in different roles within technology projects. And don't worry, I won't just tell you why these reasons cause projects to fail. I will also explain how you can prevent them from happening into your next project. Reason number 1: solving the wrong problem. I've seen this time and time again with technology projects. Companies think they're creating something to address the problem, but it turns out they're addressing the wrong problem. In the example of my client, the Swiss private bank, the whole project of replacing the core banking system was initiated from within the IT department. They had some feedback from relationship managers and clients that the system was not modern enough. They were on certain pressure regarding cost. They had some difficulties finding people that were actually able to understand and write COBOL. So within the thinking of the IT department, the problem they tried to solve is we need a modern core banking system. And so the project started. When there would have been far much more dialogue on what the real key problem was, they would have figured out far much sooner that the actual big problem they needed to solve is that their clients, and because of that, their relationship managers, expected a modern e-banking solution. And although the core banking suite that they bought had an e-banking module, they could have bought a far much more modern e-banking suite at a specialist provider and connect this to their existing core banking environment. This would reduce the scope of the project by 90-95%, the cost as well, and you had a totally different risk profile. So the clients only wanted to have a modern e-banking environment available to them. As a result, the relationship managers wanted to have this as well, because they don't want to say no to their clients. None of them cared about the backend. None of them cared about how difficult it would be to get COBOL developers. Right? So whenever you start a new project, you have to be absolutely clear about what problem you really try to solve. To quote a famous organizational theorist, Professor Russell Ackoff, we fail more often because we solve the wrong problem than because we get the wrong solution to the right problem. Reason number 2, lack of leadership and accountability. When I start working with a client, the first 3 questions that I ask are: who is the project sponsor? Who are the members of the project steering committee? and who is the project manager? Why am I asking that? Well, the project sponsor is the person accountable for delivering business value. Members of the project steering committee are the persons accountable for stakeholder management, risk management, and unblocking things like resource issues. They have to make sure that the project will deliver benefits. They have to keep an eye on that the project is solving problems that need to be solved. And the project manager is accountable for project delivery success. And make no mistake, for any decently sized project, this is a full-time role. If you have these roles not covered, then it will be very hard to deliver the project successfully, because it will be not clear to the organization who is accountable, who is making decisions, who can I ask questions. So you have to fill these roles with the best people in your organization that you can think of for your specific project. Any large project needs strong leadership from the top down. If a project doesn't have buy-in and support from C-level executives, as well as from some specific department leaders, it will be very difficult to get employees on board and hard to know who is in charge when it comes to difficult decisions. If your executives aren't driving the project and holding the team accountable, it will easily spiral completely out of control. Reason number 3, poorly defined project success. We talked about it at length. A project can only be successful if it is clearly defined what success is. Else, you're depending on pure luck. So, one of the first things the project sponsor, the steerco members, and the project manager have to do jointly is actually defining the success criteria on the 3 levels we previously discussed. I've seen many projects that skip this part completely. The moment you start, this is one of the pillars to base your project on. So, you want to improve customer service by implementing ServiceNow, then you have to answer how you're going to measure if this was successful. Does that mean shorter response times? Does it mean a higher first resolution rate? Does it mean less ping pong between your teams? Does it mean fewer customer calls because of the chat functionality? You will have to define what success means in this specific context for this specific project. If you don't know this, you are doomed to fail. When you are thinking about replacing your custom ERP system with a cloud-based standard system, this by itself has nothing to do with digital transformation, unless you can define how it will help your clients, your business, and your employees. You need to be able to justify its high risk and high cost, else there are probably better investments to be made in your business. Reason number 4 poorly defined done. Failure starts when we can't tell what done looks like in any meaningful way. Without some kind of an agreement on our vision of done, we will never recognize it when it arrives, except when we've run out of time or money or both. Without a clear and concise description of done, the only measures of progress are the passage of time, consumption of resources, and production of technical features. And these measures of progress fail to describe what business capabilities our project needs to produce or what mission we're trying to accomplish. This is different from defining success. This is about defining capabilities. Capabilities drive requirements. Therefore, without first identifying the needed capabilities, we cannot deliver a successful project, and it will end up a statistic, like all the other failed projects. So when we take, for example, a CRM implementation, I need to define upfront which capabilities I want to implement here. Pipeline management, account management, opportunity management, contact management, meeting management. Do I need email integration? Do I need calendar integration? These are essential questions to answer before you actually start the project and before you define what actually needs to be done and what constitutes of success. Reason number 5. No plan or timeline. After we answer the question, what is done meaning, we need to answer the question, how do we get there? And preferably on time and on budget and with acceptable outcomes. So we need a plan to get to where we're going, to reach our definition of done. This plan can be simple or it can be very complex. The fidelity of the plan depends on our tolerance of risk. The complexity of the plan has to match the complexity of the project itself. Without a clear timeline and plan with milestones, any project, but technology projects in particular, will wander off the original path and will hit many detours and dead ends. So, a clear plan and someone to keep track of it is vital for keeping such projects moving forward. Having a plan includes having the right skilled people available to work on the project. This can be actually quite challenging when you work with replacing legacy applications and dealing with legacy source code, because there are not that many people available anymore with the know-how you need to be successful. Having a plan does not mean it will actually happen as defined in a plan, right? Your plan will change over time as it has to adapt to reality. But having no plan is a pretty certain way to failure. Dwight Eisenhower said it best: plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Reason number 6. Failure to ask, validate, and address feedback. The thing about technology projects is that ultimately they're made for people, not machines. A lack of real-world user testing before launch is a common problem. All the consultants, software engineers, solution architects, and business analysts, they all think they know what users want. They just didn't always ask those users. And the users may have an entirely different set of needs and problems as what your consultants actually tell you. So, talking to the users and showing them mock-ups, showing them early versions, and asking for feedback is very important. And when you get that feedback, then you actually have to do something with it. Because if you just note it all down and the next time you show the result to the user and the feedback is not incorporated, then it looks silly, to put it mildly. And when you do this with too many users, or you're not able to explain why things are not incorporated, you will actually create a very negative user experience. Part of this feedback also comes from performance testing, right? It's essential to test your new system under expected load very early. You need to address performance issues as soon as you notice them, because even the best system won't be used or would be very, very ineffective when it's just too slow to work with. Reason number 7, insufficient change management. Any system is only as good as how well it is used. If it's a CRM, an ERP, or any other business application, when users don't know how to use the system effectively, the benefits of such a system for your organization will be very small or even negative. This means user enablement is critical to the success of a technology project. It is not enough to simply have your new system going live and send a few emails around with the new login information. As soon as you have the answers, your users need to know why you're implementing the system. Why are we doing this? They also need to know how existing processes will change and which new processes will be introduced with the new system. What seems like very small changes for the project team might be a huge change for the team or the user that actually have to work with it. Then users need to know how to use the system. You have to invest in training. I know that a lot of suppliers say, my system is so simple, users learn it by themselves, they don't need formal training, we have some online help and it's all easy to do. The reality is mostly different. And even when it works for a group of users, it will pretty much certainly won't work for all users. You will have young people that have grown up with technology, you have older people that are coming from a whole different background, you have people that work 20 years in your company, you have people that work there for 2 days. You have to be able to explain them how to use the system effectively. Users also need to know who to contact in case they require support with any problems or questions. If this is a help desk, in-house, outsourced, doesn't matter. You have to explain this to the user up front so that they don't stand there clueless as soon as the first problem arrives. And the last thing all users need to know is, can they offer feedback and make suggestions to improve the system? Where can I bring this feedback? Who is going to listen to me? What are you going to do with this? Because you will learn a lot after go live. So, change management. It is key for any technology project to succeed. Number 8, over customizing standard software. Adjusting standard software to quirky business processes is a recipe for disaster. When we go back to the SAP project from Lidl, one of the biggest problems was a "this is how we always do it" mentality at Lidl. Implementing this software meant every single process of the company should be reassessed and adjusted. But Lidl's management was not prepared to do that. Unlike many of their competitors, Lidl bases its inventory management system on purchase prices. The standard SAP for retail software uses retail prices. Lidl didn't want to change, so they ordered the software to be adapted. And although this seems like a not so big change, it pretty much meant that all business logic within the application had to be adjusted, all the screens had to be adjusted, all the computation formals, etc. Right? So because of this one change, suddenly many more accommodations had to be made, and the more changes that were made to the code, the more complex and buggy it became. Performance fell and cost rose. Altering existing software is like changing a prefab house. You can put the kitchen cupboards in a different place, but when you start moving the walls, there is no stability left. So don't customize standard software to your process unless the process is your competitive advantage. And in that case, you should really think about building or renewing your own applications and not buying standard software. As the name says, standard software is when you follow the standard, not when you want to build a customized process. Reason number 9, no real decisions. Real decisions are decisions made that are then supported by the right people. That doesn't mean everybody has to agree. They just have to agree that this has been decided and we're going to support that decision. And then that decision is communicated to everybody who needs to be informed. And in large projects, this is often difficult. We have many different stakeholders that have an interest in the outcome of the project. Those interests might not always be the same. Also, you will have decisions that are very positive for one group of stakeholders, but will actually have a negative effect on other stakeholders. So that will always create tension. And although feedback and governance is an essential part of any project, decision by committee rarely leads to the best outcome. So every project should have a very clear accountability and ownership, and then decisions are driven through that construct. So when I come back to, for example, the steerco, we have that steering committee that represents a large group of stakeholders. When people in the steerco disagree, then it should be already determined up front how you handle these disagreements. Do you have a majority vote, or can the sponsor overrule? Or do you just flip a coin? Doesn't matter. You have to know how you get to make difficult decisions. Then you have to make sure that as a leadership team, these decisions are supported and then very clearly communicated to the rest of the firm. Number 10, continuing to pursue bad ideas. In Hollywood, they say it's easy to make a bad film from a good script, but it is impossible to make a good film from a bad script. So, although you won't always recognize a bad idea straight away, once you do, never assume that you'll make it work or believe that you've put in too much effort to change course. The sunk cost fallacy is real. So the minute you recognize that an idea won't work, you have to pull the plug. It's usually impossible to fix a bad idea. You'll only waste time, money, and energy trying to put some lipstick on a pig. So this brings us to the end of my talk. I hope I could give you some insights into why large technology projects fail so often and what you can do to prevent this from happening in your organization. Thank you very much for your attention, and when you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.